So it's, both are important. And you can learn things though from events, don't get me wrong. DOJ, there's been a bunch of publications in the last 5 years about sentinel events. What can we learn about a tragedy if we analyze it in detail? What went wrong where? What went wrong with the Boeing MAX 3740? If we analyze in detail, we can figure out what went wrong in this particular force. Things could have been done better. And fortunately, what I'm telling you is that PPB now has systems in place where those inspectors analyze the heck out of those force cases and give feedback, in addition to legal prosecutorial issues. They give feedback immediately to, are there training implications for this? Are there implications for the individual, to his supervisor, that he doesn't do that again, whatever he did, So those systems were not in place a few years ago. I mean, they were informative sometimes, but now it's required. So there are things, but you don't change, you don't turn an ocean liner around overnight or immediately like a speedboat, right? I mean, it takes time. So, but I don't get me wrong, you guys should go wherever you need to go. I'm just saying the settlement agreement, and I don't know if DOJ is here and wants to refer to that, it's narrowly defined. You talk about kids in school. Someone in one of the recommendations I noticed being arrested too much, African Americans being arrested. That's not in here. But I'm not saying it's not important. I've seen that problem nationwide in other schools.
Yeah, and
that's fine. Tom wants to say something? Okay, Tom? That's not Tom, that's you. You want to say something? Okay, go ahead, Tom.
I just wanted to add to this conversation about systems being the outcome of implementation. So in the amended settlement agreement, paragraph 170 talks about how the COCO has to look at whether the implementation of the settlement agreement has created these various systems. There's systems for responding to persons of mental health crisis and accountability. And so what we've done with our quarterly and semi-annual reports is we've looked at not only has the implementation of the letter of the individual paragraphs been accomplished, but has it led to those systems? And so to kind of add on to what Dr. Rosenbaum was saying, with mental health, there's these systems of evaluating the mental health template data. One of the things that the analysts in the BHU did is he identified with BHRT clients, as they were nearing the 60-day period after receiving BHRT services, they saw a slight blip in police contacts. So what they did is they got ahead of that.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Trend.
Yeah.
Right, and so basically has the implementation of the paragraphs led to systems, and that's a large part of where we're also finding substantial compliance, is that not only have they checked the box with the individual paragraphs, but they've also created these systems that act as a system for self-governance and as a system for self-improvement.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. And I guess the other one thing I'll say, and I'll stop talking, is if you guys really want to tell us that you feel that the city and PPB are not in substantial compliance to us, I would strongly encourage you to not necessarily talk about incidents or people or whatever, but say paragraph so-and-so, they did not do that. What specific paragraph and what in that language didn't they do? Because that's what we're judging them by. It's not checking boxes, but it's legally binding for us.
Thank you. I'm going to move on to Amy.
Yeah, speaking of paragraphs, there's two that really catch my attention, and one is paragraph 89 and one is paragraph 90. Both speak to the CCOs putting together one or more drop-off centers for first responders and public walk-in centers for individuals with addictions and/or behavioral health services, which I totally understand. A lot of this wasn't mandated by, the settlement agreement, but I do notice that there's lots of references in both 89 and 90, which clearly kind of tell me that you're stating there was no opportunity for people to engage, but yet we find everything is substantially compliant. The other is down below in paragraph 90, it talks about, these committees will pursue immediate and long-term improvements to the behavioral health care system. Initial improvements include, I guess in the COCO summary, increased sharing of information subject to lawful disclosure, but it doesn't say what information. Creation of rapid access clinics, I'd sure like to know where they are. Enhanced access to primary care providers, that's kind of exclusive to who their CCO is and who they're allowed to have as a provider, makes it complicated to get new ones. Expand options for VOC operators to divert calls to civilian mental health services, but it doesn't explain who or what. Addressing unmet needs identified by Safer PDX, who's Safer PDX and what do they do? Expanding and strengthening networks of peer-mediated services. Who's providing the peer-mediated services and I guess how is it put out? So, and then it says down below that the officers did not have an ample opportunity to participate in subcommittee efforts, but it doesn't specify what subcommittees they did not have, I guess, access to getting into. Because it talks about having subcommittees formed to talk about this, and the BHU would be overseeing a lot of that information, but it doesn't get into descriptives as to who or what was done in order to show that it was substantial compliance for these two paragraphs. So that was just kind of my question, is the who, the what, the where, and then you say that even though this can't be done, we've met substantial compliance. So I guess I'm a little confused.
Okay, well, Tom, you didn't hear that, right?
No, I heard that.
Okay, this is your area, but I will just say,
Can you put the phone up to my?
yeah, I will, but first I just want to say that, again, these are real problems. I don't deny that they are, and I don't think Tom will either, some of these. We can probably be more specific, but it's an issue of, in the end, who's responsible for this? And so, who's responsible for making these changes? But Tom, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, and I think I understand your concern with everything not being detailed out in this. I think that this is a function of this having been found in substantial compliance in a prior report, and this was just the updated on that prior substantial compliance. So our summary of paragraph 90, you're right that it doesn't give the detail. So I'm looking at the full amended settlement agreement, and so the increased sharing of information, that part, that's between BOEC, Multnomah County, and healthcare providers. A lot of that is done with the BHCP. Again, and the crux of paragraph 90 is that the CCOs will immediately create these subcommittees. And so again, we look to see what PPD and the city can reasonably be expected to do in order to satisfy the intent of these paragraphs. So through PPD and through the BHU and the BHU coordinating team, there is increased sharing of information that's subject to lawful disclosure. The one part that you talked about where it was connecting and BOEC having the opportunity to connect to peer provider to civilian providers, BOEC partners with the Multnomah County Crisis Line when the call doesn't require a police response immediately, and the MCCCL they work with one of the CCOs. I forget it off the top of my head right now, but there is that coordination. Some of these, you're right, they haven't come to fruition. The paragraph 90G, the telepsychiatry, where you can do video conferencing, that's something that has not come out of the settlement agreement. But again, the question is, are the CCOs supposed to do it, which is what paragraph 90 says, and the CCOs aren't under the settlement agreement. So we look at what PPD has done, what the city has done, what BOEC has done, and that's where, maybe not in this report, and that's why I'm saying I apologize that most of this detailed information that I think you're asking for would have come when we had first found them in substantial compliance for paragraph 90. But the city and the city's entities have done a lot of things to at least try to accommodate the intent of paragraph 90. And that's where we find substantial compliance is in their efforts to do what they can within their power.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so thank you for the presentation. So I heard you say two things. One, the theory is that all of this training will produce better results. And then you also said that over the 5 years you've seen those better results. So as an academic as well, I like to look at the data, and I appreciate you saying 2 incidents is hard to make a general conclusion from, but the Portland Police Bureau has collected data on use of force incidents, and their data for the last 2 years suggests that 50% of the use of force incidents are against houseless people, 27% are black people in a city that is 6% black, about 14% are people in a mental health crisis. So I would put the question to you, does that suggest, if all of this training has happened, that these are successful statistics as a result of that training? These statistics seem egregious and suggest that either the training is not working and or the settlement agreement will provide nothing in terms of outcome change. And I appreciate you saying you're beholden to what the actual paragraphs of the legal document say. But say, for instance, there were 1,000 people with mental illness killed by the police every year, or that 98% of the use of force incidents were houseless people. I think those outcomes have to mean something in terms of the output, in terms of the trainings, suggesting that these trainings aren't actually being effective. And a second question I have to you, in the 2018 auditor's report on the Gang Enforcement Task Force, they noted that in 90% of the traffic stops, there was no data collected on the reasons for those stops. And they criticized the Bureau for that. The Bureau acknowledged that. Is that data being collected? And if so, is it publicly available, or can pccep be given that data?
Okay. On the last question, by the way, I would suggest you, the auditor has done the latest analysis of that. I think the data are available, and I think they are doing a better job, but I can't speak for that because I haven't specifically investigated that. But back to your original, the theory is not just that training will lead to better results. It's actually, the DOJ model is more of a policy change leads to training, leads to better results. So, in fact, a big part of the settlement agreement is that they have to change their policies in all these areas. And we spent like a couple of years arguing about the wording of policy. And then that was the basis for training. But then the other thing that I just want to clarify the theory. My primary theory here, and Tom's, is that it's not the training, it's the measurement of the organization as a learning organization. So if you don't measure something, it doesn't matter. Nobody can care. You can lie about how good you're doing, etc. You don't keep measure. So I agree with you, the data. But so setting up all these internal systems of review and auditing and checking on themselves, as well as an external system, checking as the public who had a recent contact satisfied with the encounter. And I think that will tell you guys a lot if they keep doing that over the next few years. That's really critical. Regarding use of force, I mean, the glass half full, half empty. I mean, it's a very, the houseless thing. Here's another example. I think it's a tragedy in this country, what's going on with homeless and houseless people. It's like, but two quick comments. One is, we got to think bigger than the police. Okay. But secondly, with regard to police, show me in this consent decree, the settlement agreement, where that word is even mentioned. It's not. It's not in here. So I'm not saying you shouldn't take it up. I think you should. So I'm just saying different roles here is all I'm saying.
Okay, could I just ask you then, given this data, do you think the training is, there was the point about training about neutrality in this procedural justice. Neutrality means not targeting particular groups. Do you think that this data suggests that the police are not targeting particular groups?
Well, the houseless data is particularly complicated, I've learned. And someone from the police here may want to talk about that. A lot of those use of forces are, there's arrests over warrant